On the Paper Talk today, we're talking about Andre Onana, that's his name. Yes, he could be heading to Old Trafford within the next few days, apparently. And could Rasmus Hojlund be joining him? And is there some players that are going as well? Let's get into it. Jay here, Stretford Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford and it's pretty mild. There's no need for a parka today in Manchester. Loads of stories to get through, so we'll power through them all. A few transfer stories. Nothing really happening on the takeover update, but on the takeover front, I should say. So it's more the same there, but we'll get into everything anyway. So make sure you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. We want to get to 800,000 subscribers. We've got to 700,000. Next stop, 800,000. Right, let's start off with the goalkeeper situation. David De Gea, obviously, he's left now. He gave his farewell message on Twitter on Saturday. I was covering this yesterday in Gazzetta. We wish him well. Andre Onana looks like he's set to arrive at Old Trafford within the next 72 hours. That is what all the stories indicate. Terms are agreed between the club and the player. It's now just a case of Inter Milan and Manchester United getting over the line when it comes to the fee negotiations, but it doesn't sound like they're that far apart. The Evening News has picked up on something that was in Gazzetta dello Sport. Simply says Andre Onana will join United this week. I told you. It sounds like Andre Onana could be on his way to United. Gazzetta dello Sport says United are close to reaching an agreement with Inter Milan for the goalkeeper as they search for a replacement to David De Gea. United are preparing a third offer worth €50 million plus add-ons, which is likely to be accepted. And it was even claimed yesterday that a transfer could be finalised in the next 72 hours, which means you have 48 hours from now. So that looks like it's going to happen, doesn't it? David De Gea is going out. Onana's coming in. A player that Erik ten Hag knows from his time at Ajax. Obviously, did really well for Inter. Helped them get to the Champions League final and put in a very good performance in the Champions League final. Undoubtedly, you've seen the clips of that doing the rounds. That was one small beacon of light in what was a pretty dour night for football. Not just for United, for football. City winning the treble was horrible, wasn't it? Anyway, we'll get into some other stories. Enough of that. Fred changes agent with United open to sale. This is, again, this has been picked up in the papers. It comes from a Fabrizio Romano tweet. It says, understand, Fred has now picked new agent, same group as Gabriel Jesus. He could leave as Fulham will bid for Fred, but also Saudi clubs want him. He's under contract until 2024 at Man United, but understands that playing a more important role is key now for his future. Fulham want him. There was talk that United wanted around 20 million quid for him. We'll have to see what happens on that front. I like Fred. He's one of those players, probably not at a level we need if we're going to win titles, but certainly gave his all, can do a job for Manchester United. And if he is going to move on, then I wish him well, and I think it looks like he could well be moving on, because there's been several reports that he's on a list of players that Erik ten Hag wants to sell in order to bring in some of the players that he needs and wants. One of those players being Rasmus Hojlund. Now, loads of stories doing the round about Hojlund. Apparently, Manchester United and the player have agreed terms. Terms have been agreed between the player and Manchester United. It's now just a case of Atalanta and United agreeing terms. Now, this was in the Evening News. It says United will reportedly launch a new bid to sign Rasmus Hojlund this week. It is suggested that United have already agreed an agreement already have an agreement in principle over the player's personal terms. And there's a quote here from a tweet from Nicolo Schira. It says, Manchester United are preparing a new bid to submit to Atalanta to try and sign Rasmus Hojlund. His agency, SEG Group, has already reached an agreement in principle with United for a contract until 2028. So terms agreed between the club and the player, just not the club and the club, which is similar to where we're at with Andre Onana as well. The players agreed terms with United. It just seems the clubs need to agree terms. Obviously, that's pretty important. You've got to get those terms agreed. Otherwise, what's going to happen? Just on the Onana front as well, Romano also tweeted about that. He said sources expect agreement to be done by Wednesday, Thursday. So everything is pointing towards it being this week, within the next sort of 48 hours, where we see Andre Onana hopefully come to Manchester United. And fingers crossed, Rasmus Hojlund won't be far behind him. And that would be good, quick business for Manchester United for once. If we've got Mount, Hojlund and Andre Onana in before we go on pre-season tour. I know we've got a game against Leeds this week, and we'll have a preview for that later on as well in Oslo. But for the pre-season tour, if you can get 3 players in for that, that'd be decent. Don't forget, last season, we were still signing players once the Premier League had kicked off. When was it that Casemiro joined us? It wasn't until, was it about 3 games in, I think. Romano as well tweeted about Axel Disasi. This is the kid from Monaco. He says Newcastle United and Manchester United are both exploring Disasi deals. No bids of yet. Newcastle approached the player this week. Approached the player side this week. Expected to make contact with Monaco. Ten Hag approved Disasi. Talks for weeks on player side, but still waiting for an approach with Monaco. More to follow. Now, there's another story about this. I think this is in the Metro, and this is basically saying that he's after Disasi, that Ten Hag wants Disasi because we missed out on Kim Min-jae. Looked like Kim Min-jae was going to come to Old Trafford. However, that didn't materialise. He's now gone to Bayern Munich. So Erik Ten Hag still wants a defender. However, the fly in the ointment is going to be about the fact that we need to sell to buy, don't we? Because I think we've got a limited budget of around 120, 130 million. We've already spent 60 million of it on Mason Mount. We're also going to spend about 50 million of it on Onana. Plus we want to bring in Rasmus Hojlund. So there's some sales that have got to be made. Freddie's obviously one of them. It looks like perhaps Jadon Sancho, according to some recent reports, could be heading out. Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay. There's a few players there. Anthony Martial's another one you could probably add onto the list. We had Chris Wheeler in on the podcast last week, and he spoke about the fact that there's about 13 players that United could potentially sell this summer. He said about 5 of those, though, are on a list of players that Erik Ten Hag is actively looking to sell, and about another 8 are players that the club would be willing to accept offers for without sort of pushing to get rid of those players. One thing United have got to do, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, is get better at player sales. But it is refreshing to hear that United are trying to get some deals done early. Now, I'm not going to start counting my chickens and all that stuff, because at the moment we've only signed one, and that's Mason Mount. But if, and it's a big if we can get Onana and Rasmus Hojlund in this week, which is ambitious, but that's what some reports are indicating, or even if we can get them in the next couple of weeks, that'd be a decent bit of business to go into the pre-season tour of the US with 3 players signed. I don't think that should be the end of it. I've said countless times on this podcast we need more than one striker. Do I think we're going to buy 2 strikers? Oh, there's a wasp. Probably not. But producer Callum giggling at me there. At least I didn't run off like last time, eh? But to get 3 players in who arguably are first-team players as well, early doors would be a good bit of business. And this is what Manchester United need to start doing. We need to start acting swiftly. Get the players in. Get them in pre-season. Get them ingrained with the team. Get them used to what it means to be representing Manchester United. When you go away on pre-season tour Manchester United, you will get a rude awakening. If you're coming from a smaller club like Atalanta or like Inter Milan or like Chelsea, for example, United on pre-season, they get absolutely hounded. It's a big thing. It's fans everywhere. And I think even managers, I think David Moyes had a bit of a wake-up call when he took the team on pre-season. He took them to a beach where he took Everton before and got away with it, and they were absolutely mobbed. It's a big deal playing for Manchester United, and I think getting these players in early, getting them used to Erik Ten Hag, getting them used to the tactics, and getting them used to what it means to represent one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in the world, then that makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, anyway. What also makes a lot of sense is you lot subscribing to this channel. So don't forget to hit like, share, subscribe. We're back later on with the Paddock podcast with myself, Joe Smith, and Stephen Howson, as well as the preview looking ahead towards the pre-season games. Can you believe games are already upon us? Anyway, the sun's shining in Manchester. It's all good. Thanks for watching.